Everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to do a basic unwrap on a model using Blender 2.8. So here's a basic model I'm going to use to unwrap. It's pretty low poly. I mean, I can res it up if needed, but this is an unwrapping tutorial. I guess first off, I'm going to make this thing symmetrical, just because I want to only unwrap half of it. So if I press Z and go to wireframe, I can go in face mode and box select. So either press B or grab this tool up here. And then grab half of my model. And I'll just delete the faces. If I go back and add a modifier under this wrench tab, you can go to mirror, and now I've got a mirrored model. So whatever I do on one side, it does it on the other. It's probably easier to unwrap this way if it's symmetrical, ideally. I wasn't really going to make mine symmetrical, but for this purpose it'll be easier to unwrap it. So I'll just leave that modifier on. It's not actually creating a model, it's just until you press apply. Once you press apply, it'll create the model, and it'll merge the vertices together based on this number right here. Anyways, let's start unwrapping half of my model. So I'll go back to regular solid view. And what we're going to use up here is the UV editing tab. You can see there's nothing here yet. If I press A for all, sometimes there's an unwrap, sometimes not. We can try different random unwraps. If you just press UV and then go to unwrap, it'll just give you a generic unwrap, which is not ideal. Sorry, I'll show you where that is. So that's not what we want. We want this thing to be kind of in pieces, and we don't want any stretching. On that note, you already saw, if you pull out this little tab, this little arrow thing, under overlays there's a stretching option. You can turn that on. You can see if it's green, it means it's stretching. If it's blue, it means it's fine. But the idea of unwrapping is basically to cut this 3D model so that it can be folded out onto a 2D plane, and then we can apply a texture to it. And we want to kind of cut it in a way that it doesn't stretch as much as possible. We can kind of see, I guess we should start with making the material so we can kind of check on this. If you go over to, let's see, material here, it's like a circle with, cut and forward pieces. If you go to new, and then under base color, hit this circle, and we want an image texture. And then under that, you say new, and we're going to use a color grid. And you can leave it at 1024 or 2048, doesn't really matter. Just press OK. And then you'll see it puts this UV color grid on there for me. Or it tried to, so there's something horribly wrong with our unwrap. So the best way to see this actually is to press Z and then go to Look Dev, and it'll give you the material and then the unwrap without light, so you can kind of see it better. Anyways, this is really messed up, and you can see if you click over here, I can't see anything here. So we want to go into UV up here and turn on Live Unwrap. I believe on both of them. And then you also want to hit this little arrow thing that syncs the selections. So now I can see, so this basically lets it, if I choose an object or choose a face or a vertex or whatever here, it'll show me over here where that corresponding location is, which is helpful. You'll see in a second. And then the live UV unwrap allows it to unwrap automatically as you make your cuts. So I'll show you how we make some cuts. I'll start with, I guess, I'll chop off this part. So you're going to kind of want to separate individual pieces of geometry the best you can, especially if there's a change between materials or if there's a hidden spot where you can make a cut. So for now, I'm just going to separate this rectangular piece of the hammer from the rest of it. And I'm just going to use edge mode and click from one edge, hold control and click to the next, and it'll kind of select everything in between. Then you can either go up here to the edge menu and say mark seam. You see it kind of automatically updated itself to some extent. but you won't get what you want until we do the full cut. So again, select all those, and you can go to the edge menu or just press Control E for edge, and it'll pull up this little edge menu for you. Alright, last little piece here. And now we can see it's separated. It separated them, but it's still a mess, right? So like when you get a box in the mail from Amazon or something, it's when they printed the logos on it, it was flat. And to do that, if you break down a cardboard box, you'll know it has like cuts where certain pieces are cut out and they fold together and they're taped together or whatever. So we're essentially going to do the same thing with this box that we're using. So I already have edges here. I might as well kind of keep that going, I guess. Or you know what, I'll just go from corner to corner and then around the side, maybe both ways. We'll see how that works. So if I hit Control E again, mark seam, it starts folding out, but it's not ideal. We don't really want, we want it to fold out more than that. So let's say if I cut from there to there, now it's starting to fold out more, but it looks like, you can see here, this is the part that's stretching. So like you can even select it here and then mark that seam, and it'll unfold within the UV editor itself, which is sometimes an easier way to do it. And then these little corners seem like they're a little too pinched, so you might want to release them just to kind of alleviate some of the stretching issues. You can see so ideally what we want with this material that we put on is we want all the squares to look square, and we want them to be in order, and the biggest thing is we want them to look square. So if they're stretched out, like, you know, here or something like that, or down here, not ideal. We want them to be all squares. So we do have some stretching on this point, just because of the shape of the geometry. We could cut it out if we wanted to. So let's see if I just select this whole thing, mark seam, it will cut it out, and then you can kind of give it a slice down one end to alleviate that stretching. It's going to be a personal preference, and it's going to be on a per object basis where you want these cuts to be, because as you can see, if there's a texture here, it's not going to match up perfectly. So you want to hide your cuts, and you only want to use them as needed, I guess. So let's say I wanted to do that. That's fine. We'll say that's good, none of that is stretched. So moving on to the next pieces. I'm going to separate these connectors from the main shaft of the weapon. So I'll just select all those, Control E, mark seam. Okay, so those are all separate pieces, and let's see. They also need to be cut down the middle too, to have some sort of way to unwrap themselves. So we can just hide it, probably at the bottom is the best place to hide the cut. So you can see if I select here, mark seam, click, Control E, mark seam. I've separated these all into, so if you don't know what's what, you can always select a thing here and see what the corresponding thing is. So it's these three pieces. They are a tiny bit stretched just because of the shape, but I think that's an acceptable amount of stretching for this piece, at least. If you wanted to, you can slice them up a little bit more, but again, you don't want to put too many cuts. Alright, so after that, we got these. The last parts we have to do is the shaft, the hand piece, I guess, and then the spiky ball at the bottom. So I'll start with just chopping off the spiky ball, because I know that's, you know, a separate piece. It's fairly easy to separate. So you can see it's up here, and you can see it's kind of, you know, it's okay. It's not terrible. I might just actually leave that as is. If you're not satisfied, you can, you know, adjust or cut as needed, but I think I'm going to leave that. And then I'll probably need to separate the handle, just because the geometry is too different from the actual shaft. So I'll select that, mark seams, and basically just cut it out. Or cut it off the shaft. And you can see with all these red lines, that'll show you where the seams are. So I missed an edge, but now I can see, okay, now my seams are cut. And it's cut up here. And like anything else, it's going to need to be cut down the middle. And I'll hide it on the inside, so that would probably be a good place to hide it. You can see it's starting to get a little better here. This is the piece we're looking at. The spikes are going to have stretching issues just because they're spikes. But I think it's okay. You could cut them out, so if you wanted to just cut each spike off, you can do so. And then, like we did with the other spike, just give it a cut down one of the edges, and it'll unfold them. So, I mean, that has less stretching, but it has more seams. So it's a battle between which of those you want. Also, so if I have a seam that I don't want, I can select it and then Control E, go clear seam. And say I want that seam on the bottom instead. So it's more hidden. Okay, so that's those are not stretched at all. There's a tiny bit of stretching here, which is acceptable. That's good. The shaft thing looks good, which is probably the most important piece along with the hammer. So as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough for a demo. There's a few other buttons you can try. You can go ahead and select all, so go to face mode, press A, and under UVs you can try minimize stretching, and then you can kind of move your mouse. It doesn't seem to work ever for me. It just generally makes things worse, but the option's there. You can also do average island scale. So each one of these sections is called an island. If you turn off this arrow, there is a way to select things by islands here. So if I grab, if I click on each thing, it'll grab it by the whole island. Then you can just press G to grab it and move it around. But if we go back to the UV sync, which I prefer, that option's not there. But you can go to average island scale and pack islands, and I guess it automatically did that for all of us, so that's about it. As long as you're satisfied that these are relatively square and semi-similar sizes of squares, like everything looks roughly the same size, then it should be a fairly functional unwrap. From there, if you want to take this thing out to texture, all you got to do is go to UV, export UV layout, and then this will be your UV layout that you can then texture. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'm going to go to object mode and apply my modifier, and you can see there are benefits to doing it this way. The one benefit is that you get more texture space, I guess, on your UV layout. And then when it's cut down the middle, it should mirror over seamlessly. The only issue, as you can see, is that it is a mirror of itself. So if there's any words or anything, that's not going to be a workflow. But you can do the same exact workflow, but just do the whole thing. And you'd have to do it on both sides, you know. But if it is symmetrical, you can do this little workaround, and in object mode, just apply it, and now you got a fully unwrapped thing ready to texture, and it didn't take too long. So hope that helped. If you have any questions or comments, or if I missed anything, let me know below, and thanks.